Welcome to the pod you're listening to. What the Reality with me, Cassia Roberts. And this is What's the Reality on What the Reality. We're doing a deep dive on America's Next Top Model. That has been the latest buzz. The documentary just dropped. E will also be dropping a docu-series on it. I think it's just going to be one episode, but everyone cannot stop talking about America's Next Top Model. So we're doing a deep dive. In part one, we're talking about the birth of America's Next Top Model and some of the biggest scandals and controversies, and a little more info on your girl, Tyra Banks. Welcome to the pod you're listening to. What the Reality with me, Cassia Roberts, and we are back. Not with Toxic Tuesday, but this is the What's the Reality on What the Reality. I know it has been a minute. However, we are back. It's been a while. I'm going to try to do what's the realities on what the realities as much as I can, but it is a lot. Especially when I was doing like the friendship dynamics and stuff, but I'm going to do it as often as I try to. Like I try to do like twice a month. Now I'm in that at least once a month, but either way you will still be seeing me weekly. But I'm like, sorry it's been so long, but I have been hyping this up. If you've been listening to me on Toxic Tuesdays, I have been hyping this next series up about, why I waited and why the schedule is so pushed back, because normally I rotate my Fridays, or like I do it like every 2 Fridays. But this one has been so drawn out because I knew this America's Next Top Model documentary was coming out and I really did want to touch on it. So this is going to be definitely two parts. Obviously, the first part, I'm not getting into the documentary at all. I haven't even watched the documentary yet, you guys. So like, hold off on that. I've been seeing it all over my social media feed and everything. Like people are talking about it. They are dissecting it. I'm going to watch that this weekend. And I'm going to try to get part two to you, not next week, but the following week. Or it might be next week. The only reason I say probably not next week is because I will be out of town next Friday. And I'm not sure if I will be able to record before I go out of town. I will update you guys by Toxic Tuesday though. Once I do that, and it'll be like, what's the reality on America's Next Top Model documentary. That one will have a specific title, but this is like the part one. Like technically, I did a deep dive on America's Next Top Model. Essentially, I watched it. I am on cycle 4 right now. I did grow up watching it. That was one of the shows that I did talk about on the pod that my mom would let me watch, like in my young phase era. Like, obviously, a 12-year-old had no business watching America's Next Top Model, but I was obsessed with it. I wouldn't say I'm a Tyra Banks stan because I say I'm a Beyonce stan, but I have loved Tyra Banks for a while. And it is just crazy to me that all these allegations and stuff is coming out. And my biggest takeaway from that has always been like, that was how the modeling industry was then. Some of the stuff she said, some of the things the judges say, which we're going to get all into that with the part one. We're breaking down the original America's Next Top Model. We're not getting into the documentary, but even just the things that the judges would say, the criticisms, that stuff worked back then. That stuff could never work right now because we're just in a different era. And I think during COVID, I'm going to put that out there. I think a lot of people were bored during COVID, obviously the arrival of TikTok, but also we saw the arrival of a lot of people like binge watching a lot of old shows. Like I think even during COVID, a lot of people got hooked onto Jersey Shore, The Hills, which I also did a deep dives on. Make sure you guys check it out. But they also got hooked onto America's Next Top Model. And they were like, how is this ever okay? Now, there are some things that happen on America's Next Top Model, which we are going to talk about, that I don't even know how that was ever okay. But a lot of people are watching it with 2020 eyes, right? That's when COVID happened. And now they're still watching it in this newer time frame. But even when you think of like shows, I even think of like shows like Sex in the City, like some of the stuff that the producers would write in the writer's room and all that stuff, that would just never go in today's time. And you could tell they really tried to stray away from that because they tried to do And Just Like That, which was a total flop. Some people just love to hate watch it, but I'm just saying, like, the stuff on Sex and the City, I'll never forget when Samantha was trying to date that black man, and she had said something so controversial, and then Carrie associating gold jewelry with being ghetto. There's just certain things you could never say in this day and age, but like stuff fly like that back then. So I always give Tyra Banks a little more slack, at least for me, especially as a black woman, because she was still trying to do something amazing for the modeling industry, especially for women. She was bringing like Eva Marcel, like she was bringing on black women. She was bringing on shorter women. And she did impact a lot of people. Now, I haven't watched the documentary yet, so maybe my opinion will change by part two. But as of now, when I look back at America's Next Top Model, yes, there's some things that I'm like, how could you do that? Obviously, we're going to get into the biggest tirade of them all. But I'm also like, you guys got to recognize this was a boss woman at the end of the day. And honestly, it's kind of like working with a former employer. It's like you don't expect your former employer to do anything for you after. And I feel like a lot of the women that went on America's Next Top Model was expecting their hand to be held. And I think you just got to make the most of your opportunity. Obviously, we're going to talk about the first season because obviously that set the stage of like, oh, are we taking this serious? Is this where we can really find models? But I do think all in all, Tyra's initial, thought process of America's Next Top Model was not to be this greedy person and this unhumble person. I do think she genuinely was trying to change the modeling industry and the modeling standards. And yeah, she came off very tough at times. She did come off very tough. Of course, it's just gotta like that's another reason. And then there's another docuseries coming out on E. It's going to be called, I don't know if it's Reality Check, but they're doing like 3 breakdowns. They're doing The Price is Right. They're doing, which Claudia Jordan's going to be on. They're doing Dr. Phil show, and then they're doing America's Next Top Model. So that's going to be like a 3-episode thing. I don't know. They're going to also be digesting that, dissecting that, yada, yada, yada. But that's another reason I wanted to wait to watch the documentary, because the social media noise is so loud, you guys, right now. Like everyone's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she did this. I can't believe she did that. And I'm just like, y'all, it is too loud right now. Like it is too loud. And then you got people that are like, honestly, I'm not mad at it. So I want to watch it and put my episode out without any of that flack and stuff. And well, not even the flack, all the buzz that's really happening right now. So this is the part 1, not to be confused. The part 1, we're going to go into America's Next Top Model, not the documentary. We are talking about the show in its totality. And then we're also going to be talking about Tyra Banks. Who is Tyra Banks? I'm going to open up with that. And then I'm also going to, like I said, I'm talking about the birth of America's Next Top Model. I'm going to talk about the judges, some of the most, controversial judges. I'm also talking about these makeovers that those would be like my favorite episodes. No tea, no shade. And then we're going to be talking about some of the biggest scandals and controversies on the show, including photo shoots and just some things that happened on the show. And I'm just like, even when I was watching it then, or even in my rewatch, I'm like, that shouldn't have happened. So yes, welcome to What's the Reality Part 1 of America's Next Top Model. Who was Miss Tyra Banks? So Tyra Banks is talked about a lot on America's Next Top Model, at least the first season and even a little bit the second season. I don't know if her story gets talked about as much as the seasons go on, because America's Next Top Model just starts blowing up, I think, really after season 3 is really when it blew up, in my opinion. Even season 2, they got like the numbers, but I'm just saying the stakes really changed by season 3. Like they were getting $100 contracts. Like it was just a lot of stuff happening. And I feel like people really started taking the show serious, because before, I think like modeling agencies, corporations and stuff, they were like, oh, what's this America's Next Top Model with, Tyra Banks' name on it. Some people are arguing, was Tyra Banks even a supermodel, which I think is insane. Like, of course, she's one of the supermodels. And that's why I want to get into who was Miss Tyra Banks. So Tyra Banks, obviously from Inglewood, California. She began modeling very young. She always talks about how she was, how we all go through an ugly phase. She says she was the ugly duckling, and then at 13, she grew 3 inches and she lost 30 pounds. And, everyone talk about her forehead, but it's like those sort of characteristics make you very unique in modeling. So she started modeling very much at 15. She graduated high school and then she was signed to LA Models. She got signed to LA Models after being rejected 4 times from previous modeling agencies. So as soon as she graduated high school, I think she graduated earlier. She graduated at 17. She jetted off to Paris, Europe, is it Paris or like specifically? Yeah, she jetted off to Milan actually. She jetted off to Milan and she was able to book 25 shows, like runway shows in Paris. And that's really where it started. Obviously, her mom would soon follow her out there, but she does talk about this on the first season when she's like, I literally graduated. My mom put me on an airplane. I was just like waving out the window, like, bye, mom. And then she was like waving back. Obviously, she didn't know like how successful she would become because she was constantly getting rejected in LA. But then once she went to Paris, she was very much loved in Paris. Her career really took off in Europe. And she was booked and busy. And then her mom eventually followed her out there and then she would return back to the States. But yeah, she was booked for 25 shows for Paris Fashion Week, and that was in 91. She then just started making history once she would eventually return to the US. So she was the first. I love her Victoria's Secret, history, because a lot of people don't know Tyra Banks was the first model, black, white, period. She was the first model to receive wings. The wings we all talk about for Victoria's Secret, the angel wings. She was the very first person to receive wings. I'll never forget. It was like this gray gray lingerie set she had on, these little gray wings, if I'm not mistaken. But she was the first model to really get angel wings, and that's what became a phenomenon, and it became very recognized for Victoria's Secret. Once you got your angel wings, you were kind of up here for Victoria's Secret. You were kind of recognized. Now I will say, now they just handing out wings to everyone, but before, it used to be a thing, like, are you walking down with wings or not? Typically, certain people, it was a given that they're walking down. I'm talking about Giselle. I'm talking about Adriana Lima. I'm talking about Tyra Banks and so many others. It was a given, especially when you have the solid core group, which was the Victoria's Secret Angel Wings. I mean, the Victoria's Secret Angels, right? And that was in 1997. She was the only black angel. And I should have looked it up, the original angels. Let me Google that really quick. Victoria's Secret original angels. It was her, Giselle, it was Tyra Banks, Helena Kristen, Karen Mutter, Stephanie Seymour, and Daniela Pistova. Oh, never mind. I thought it was Giselle. She was it with Giselle, but then eventually Giselle and Heidi Klum. Heidi Klum joined in 1997 and Giselle joined in 2000. So yes, but Tyra Banks was a part of the original solid group of the Victoria's Secret Angels, and that's obviously, like I said, she was the first one to ever get the wings. But it was very few people that receive wings. Like I said, now the people are just getting wings for, being influencers. Like, I love that for them. But like, it used to really be an initiation process. Like, you would have to test run with your wings. Like, you started with baby wings. They really just giving wings to everybody. But that wasn't the thing then. It was like, you can walk in our show, but you're not going to get Victoria's Secret wings. However, Tyra Banks was the first one. They're like, let's try this. Let's start building this. And we went through a phase where the Victoria's Secret fashion show was so idolized. Like, the men that would tune in, the musical acts, the women, like, this was a thing. Victoria's Secret fashion show was very much prominent, as you guys know. I'm going to say late 90s to honestly early 2000s. And I would even say up until like 2010, 2011, right? So she was the first one to receive the Victoria's Secret angel wings, and then a very few select black models were deemed supermodels. She was also one of the very first to get that status, and I'm seeing a lot of debate on whether she's a supermodel or not on social media, and I think it stems because she did go commercial so fast. When you think of supermodels, you think of people that are strictly on, editorial magazine covers. You think of people that are walking in Milan. You think of people that are walking in Paris at the highest of the high designer fashion shows. I think because Tyra Banks was able to really transition her brand from editorial, like I said, she was booking 25 shows when she first got down there. Like, she was considered the editorial, she wasn't really in the TVs, the scenes and stuff. But once she really started being able to capitalize off her name, i.e. start acting, singing, people didn't like to really diminish it. They're just like, oh, she was just a model. But it's like, no, she wasn't just a Victoria's Secret model. That's really what made her worldwide, though, you would argue, it's like, oh, I know that woman, she's a Victoria's Secret model, when really she's been walking these high prestigious places. And yes, she is considered a supermodel. She's one of the very first Black women to be considered that. Obviously, when we talk of supermodel status in terms of Black women, we got Beverly Johnson, we had Naomi Campbell, and it really is a select few. But she also received the VH1 1997 Supermodel of the Year. Like, and she was the first super Black. She was the first, not the first super Black. She was the first Black supermodel to appear on Victoria's Secret catalog and the cover. Like I said, once Victoria's Secret started taking off for real, which in I I really urge you guys to like look up the story of Victoria's Secret, because that whole story is interesting to me as well, of like how it took off and everything. But yeah, she was like the first Black supermodel, honestly, to appear on Victoria's Secret catalog and cover, which I find super interesting. Let's get into the birth of America's Next Top Model. So as we're talking about supermodels, I want to talk about the judges. But obviously, what we know America's Next Top Model to be is a reality competition show. It premiered May 2003. And yeah, it was a series of basically finding America's most, girls next door, misfits. It was this competition open to literally the public to apply. It was Tyra Banks' show. She was the producer, the creative producer. And you know who also was the creative producer? Jay Manuel's blonde spiked hair. But this was Tyra Banks' show. She was obviously the face of it and all of that. So this competition series would honestly feature these group of women that got selected from the finalists, and she would review these people from videos and all the stuff. That's how you would send it in. That's still how you send it in. I'm glad to know reality show casting has not changed today. But these women would send in, and she would get thousands of applications. I would even say hundreds of thousands as the show became bigger and bigger. There's no way. That's why I say now what America's Next Top Model has been, and I mean like one of the most recent cycles being like, 18 or 19, there's no way with the amount of applicants they were getting, that's when you start venturing into influencer territory. That's when you are looking for people with followers, because there's no way you're looking for people like me just at home. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, at a certain point, I do think there was a cutoff, but back then she was reviewing them. And it's like crazy to me to think, because can we please bring that back? Jobs? Hello. But anyway, so she would select 10 to 13 women. I think the first cycle had 10 or 11. And the first cycle, I believe, was 10 weeks. Eventually, this would become a 12-week program. It was basically a model boot camp where, like I said, you would take the most misfits. You would take people that had no experience in modeling, but you saw potential in them. And you're like, you're going to be America's Next Top Model. And it would be this model boot camp where you learn how to walk, you learn how to pose, and you just learn the industry. You learn how to do go-sees, you learn etiquette, you know how to talk to the press. It was a model boot camp, and it would be Until the Last Man is Standing. The iconic, whenever I would hear the theme, it would be like, you want to be on top. Like, that is a intro theme song. Like, let's bring back theme songs. That was such a classic theme song. Whenever I hear it, I would get chills. I was like, yes, I want to be on top. I want to be on top model. But yes, so that's really how America's Next Top Model started. Obviously, Tyra Banks has talked about it as well, that she wanted to start this because the modeling industry was very selective then. I mean, and you think they were selective then? They're not that selective now. Just say that. But it was very selective. You had to be white. You had to be a size 0, 00. And it was very selective back then. It's a lot easier, I think, now to become a model because we have the power of social media. Like, I can post a couple of photos, and it's so much easier now because you're just uploading images to the web, to the internet, and it's so much easy access to scout people that are like, you should be a model, you should be in this campaign, like, you are gorgeous, right? Back then, it was a lot difficult to get your foot in the door unless you lived in New York City, where you could literally go knock on these agency doors, or even LA. It was difficult for you to get into the modeling. And like I said, add on if you're a size 4, even like a size 6, 8, like normal regular sizes, right? You add that in. Tyra Banks saw a vision. She was like, I want America to choose their top model. I want this to be America's next top model, not the agencies and everything. But I even think with that, because we would have these huge contractors. She's had obviously CoverGirl, you had Sephora. I can't remember the first cycle, but I know it was like IMG models, but I can't remember who they were in partnership with cosmetics wise. I want to say, was it like CVS or something? But there's like some something cosmetics. I do wonder, and I wonder if we're gonna talk, if I'm gonna see this in the documentary. Like I said, I haven't watched it yet. I do wonder how often the people she was collabing with for these promised, things you would get like a contract or whatever, how much they also had a say into who's selecting the final or the people that are advancing to the next rounds. Because it's like, if she's gonna be the face of Sephora, this is what I want her to look like. So surely these partners had some big pull into it. But I want to talk about the first deemed supermodel, which I really didn't know was Janice Dickinson. Obviously, we know Janice Dickinson, but I didn't know she was the first self-deemed supermodel. If you talk about supermodels, they say Janice Dickinson is, but I would argue America's Next Top Model made her hot. Because if you knew that generation, or at least now for me, and I could be showing my age, I mean, what do I know? I'm a 26-year-old, but I didn't know Janice Dickinson was like a model. She's not super tall. She has breasts. I know she has a beautiful face, but I'm just like, I just know Janice Dickinson as kind of like this crazy girl. I didn't know she was this editorial Vogue woman. So she was actually one of the judges, and I deem her one of the most rude judges. But obviously, Dickinson has said, like, now, honestly, she was hired to be like the Simon Cowell of the judges. So when you think about, like, America's Next, what is it? America's Talent, or America's Got Talent, or American Idol, you think of like Simon Cowell. That's who I guess she was supposed to be. She was supposed to be like this overly harsh critiquing person, because some of the stuff she would say was honestly insane to me. So even before we get a little bit into Janice Dickinson, the show ended up being like one of the most highest rated shows on the CW from like 2007 through 2010. Now, before it was on the CW, it was on this network called the UPN. They obviously merged with Warner Bros. Or something into the CW. But the first season of America's Next Top Model was very big. And that's why I say you really see this shift in the stakes really change. At least by season 4, there's like a proper, more intro, like the women modeling and stuff. But even by season 3, the stakes just get so much higher, because now it's like you're watching this show and everyone's voting for who they want to be America's Next Top Model. Not in a Love Island way, but in a way essentially where it's like, we have to tune in to watch this show to see who's going to be America's Next Top Model. It came with a lot of clout back then, and I don't know if it really does now. Like I said, I haven't watched America's Next Top Model in years. Like, I remember the OG seasons, but as the show progressed in the early stages, the amount of attention this show was getting was insane. And I think some people let it get to their heads, including the judges. And that's why we were talking about the first self-titled supermodel, which is Janice Dickinson. She would be on from cycles 1 through 5. Eventually, she would be let go because of her behavior, and obviously, like, just not clicking with Tyra. I think she was by far one of the worst judges, and a lot of the stuff she says, like, you could not get away with in today's time. Her commentary about plus size models not belonging, and short people, and just some things that really like stick out to me. Was she on? I think she was on season 5. I can't remember. I have season cycles 1 through 4 in her, but I could have sworn she was on for 5. Maybe she just visits on 5. It's like a guest judge. But Tyra Banks, yeah, she did fire her after cycle 4 due to her negative remarks, clashing with production, and her on-set behavior. I did a deep dive, and around this time, I guess she was having substance abuse issues, and I didn't know she was having substance issues before, so I ended up on that whole web, but apparently she was just like a menace to be on set with. Janice Dickinson has also let us know how she feels about Tyra Banks in this day and age, but she has since retracted all of those negative statements about her, and she just said, like, it was a work environment, yada yada yada. Because when she was first fired, she was like, off with your head, Tyra Banks. Like, she was mad, she was hurt. And I think it's because, as much as she don't want to admit it, America's Next Top Model, it put you back in the limelight. Like, yeah, you was in the limelight before, but then this gave you a wide audience a different audience, a different demographic of people that didn't know you. Like, it's still giving that for you today, because as people are watching this documentary that's currently out, they're currently going back and rewatching the series, right? But some of the things that I just want to say that she pointed out, she would talk about the plus size models, but she made a comment, and this was to Ebony in Cycle 1. Ebony has that famous, like, if you're watching me on YouTube, she has that famous gif where it's like, she's like crying and then she's like clapping out of it. She's like, that one gif that you see, that's Ebony from Cycle 1. And I'll never forget, I guess Ebony, she didn't have the best skin. And they would talk about that in the criticism. Like, she just had textured skin. And even Tyra said something, but Janice Danson said something to me. Said something. She said that also to yikes, I'm like blanking on her name. Oh my goodness, I'm like blanking on her name, and I just watched her. She was up with Eva. Was it Isis? I don't know if it was. I cannot remember her name. She was another Black woman up, but like she also had bad skin, and they would just point it out. They would just say some of the most crazy things. I think I made note of like some of the craziest things I heard. Yeah, Janice complete disdain for any plus size model. And what did they say? It was just crazy. So maybe Janice didn't say this, but in the Cycle 1 for Ebony, Tyra did say like her skin is supposed to be brown and smooth like butter because she was Black, and she said but it isn't. They were just saying some crazy things. So Janice would be later replaced by Twiggy, which I hear honestly wasn't any good. Obviously, we had the famous Nigel Barker, who I did not know was mixed, period. I think he is. Nigel Barker and Jay Alexander. Jay Alexander is obviously the walkway, runway coach. I thought those were some of like the best judges, honestly. But clearly there was a fallout that happened later on in the series where Tyra did fire them, and I guess they were blindsided. Even Tyra was blindsided and replaced by like Rita Ora. That was like the dumbest thing ever. They had like no ratings after that. But yeah, Nigel Barker was the famous fashion photographer, and Jay Alexander, the runway coach model. They would eventually come on later. I think Nigel Barker was a pretty consistent judge, though. He was always sitting at the judge table by Cycle 2. So some other key judges that you guys probably forgot, Kimora Lee Simmons. So that was I think that was the first year contract. Like they had to walk in like one of her shows or something, like guaranteed to walk in her shows for Baby Fat. I really did enjoy Kimora Lee Simmons, but even some of the stuff Kimora Lee said, like just some of the stuff they said, like you could just tell it's like, dang, I can't believe they're just saying that. You had Kelly Catrone, guys, Kelly Catrone from The Hills. Like what? I did not watch her seasons. Like I said, I'm in a rewatch right now. I can't wait to get into those because Kelly Catrone is like honestly gutter snipe. I wouldn't be shocked if people were gobsmacked by some of the things she said. People were like, well, what is Kelly Catrone like impacting the fashion? And she's the one that actually throws these fashion shows for these fashion houses. Like people come to her, like she's a PR agency. Like she had People's Revolution, which I'm pretty sure is still open. We had Andre Leon Talley. That was a very famous one and a very notable one. Rita Ora was replaced by America's Next Top Model host, Tyra Banks. The network was trying to do some things, and that was all in that transition right before or right after Tyra had fired Nigel, Jay Alexander, and Jay Manuel. That was right after that. We're going to get into their fallout in the part 2 because I hear it's a lot. And then Law Roach would be on there eventually. And there was always like a beauty fashion editor in the magazine. So that was another incentive for the winner. You would get a cover on this magazine. So they had Mary Claire on there. They eventually would have Vogue on there. I think they had, was it like Jane Magazine the first season? I think it was Jane Magazine the first season, which is like not around now. But it would be like a different magazine editorial and cover. So it's like you were getting exposure. But from my understanding, Cycle one's exposure is definitely drastically different by the time you're hitting cycle 2 and 3, right? Definitely 3, because that's when I said you can just see the show definitely change. Let's get into some of the controversies that did play out on the show. I'm talking the makeovers. I personally enjoy the makeovers. I would enjoy these drastic changes that would really add some edge to these basic looking women, and some of them did barely needed a change, but some of them did, and it was kind of like, was it changed for the better or was it not? Like I said, I personally always look forward to those episodes because I'm like, ooh, what are you going to do with this person? Because how are you going to make them look like a top model? Some of them I agree with. I'll never forget, people hated, do you guys remember Anne? Her and Eva were friends on cycle 3. Anne went in with dark hair, which I thought made her look very chic. But she was like, I think from like Pennsylvania. So she did look kind of boring. But what they did to her hair after, they kind of gave her this Christina Aguilera makeover with like the blonde highlights. That was like in back then, like those super blonde highlights, and the rest of your hair is like dark. I don't know if it was the best. I don't know if it was the best. But then when I think of like Eva Marcel, she barely had to change. She just went a little blonder. But when I think of someone that really needed a change, and it was this most recent season I'm watching, I don't know if her name is Michaela, but she went from like dark hair, and her drastic makeover was like blonde, like it was like a yellow blonde though. It wasn't a platinum blonde. Blonde hair, and her makeover was necessary, but the process to it was insane because she had to sit in the chair, and I didn't know it like burns to go blonde. So she was like literally in pain. There was also another contestant, I think this was cycle 7, that went from like short hair to like long wavy red hair and had to get a weave sewed in. And this was actually one of the most infamous episodes because she was super excited, and then over time the weave, I guess the way they braided it down or something, like she had like scabs in her scalp. Some of these makeovers were extreme, and then you can't talk about makeovers and not talk about like some of the people's breakdowns. Some people had unnecessary breakdowns and weren't really trying to change anything. Some people revert their stuff, like they would get a blowout and then show up for the judges, decipher, and they would come back with like how their stuff was. Like Robin from, I think it was Robin from cycle 3 or 4, she had a blowout, and then she came back where she initially had just curly, like Shirley Temple hair, but it was long. But so then they made her blonder, and they wanted to blow her out so straight. So it's like literally that day after her makeover, she goes in and washes her hair and then comes back to the judges, and her hair is curly again. And they're like, well, what was the point of that? Like, it's just kind of like, if they're recommending a makeover, they definitely want to see you that day up with the makeover. And then some people's makeovers in cycle 1, Robin, she was complaining. Do you guys remember cycle 1? It is so crazy to watch. Like these women, there's like one group of super Christian focused women, and then one group of like we want to just do all the shoots, and like we don't care what it takes to be in the modeling industry. Obviously the winner, Adrienne Curry, the first ever America's Next Top Model, but she was on the opposing team. And I just remember Robin, I think it was just Shannon Girl, it ended up being like the top 2, and they were just always having like Bible study and stuff, which is cool. But it's just crazy to me how like the first season was so drastically different than the seasons to come. Like it was a clear line in like Christianity. Like some of these girls even refused to participate in a nude photo shoot. So it really was interesting, but Robin really hated her makeover. She went from like dark, long, wavy weave hair. I mean, the weave looked good. I couldn't believe it was a weave, and so they were taking it out. And then they like dyed her. It was kind of giving her like the Beyonce look, like the light blonde. They like dyed the brows and everything, which she was really affected by. And if you were not really feeling your makeover, Tyra would call you out on it because she feels like you're not trusting her, which I feel is not fair. It's like, it's kind of hard. Like people getting home makeovers and then getting sent home the next day. You know how upset I'd be if I had to go super blonde, scalp is on fire, and then you telling me the next day my photo shoot wasn't good enough. What was the point of me getting a makeover? So makeovers initially wouldn't be until like like 3-4 episodes in. As it goes on, and that's why I say by cycle 4 you can see the stakes are different, because by cycle 4 the makeovers are in the first second episode. They're just getting makeovers, and then these girls are getting sent home the next day for bad performance, and it's like, what do I do about my burning scalp? No, I think you should definitely wait. But that was just one of the biggest controversies. It's like these huge makeovers, and then it's like you're eliminating these women, and they just like accepted their fate with a buzz cut, right? It would be some pretty drastic changes. Let's get into the judges' criticisms. Like I said, the worst things I heard, I brought up the Tyra thing about ebony skin. Like, your skin's supposed to be smooth like butter, black and brown, but it isn't, because she had textured skin. They do not. They said, and the thing, their reasoning for not liking the women with textured skin was because it costs more money to retouch. And it's so crazy to me because I can do a quick retouch on CapCut now. Like, it don't cost nothing. Well, I guess it do cost something because I do play for CapCut Pro. But it is crazy to me that back then they're like, in order for us to retouch, that's a lot of money. So you want models with good skin. If they didn't have good skin, it was just kind of like, why do we want you? Like, the photographer's gonna have to pay to retouch, which is interesting. It is really interesting. So definitely look at those old catalogs, because I feel like maybe the makeup or the skin was looking a lot more natural back then. I feel like everything now was retouched. So that was her reasoning for not really caring for Ebony, and Ebony really couldn't just like pose. But I do feel like the way the girls even treated Ebony, like Ebony was like one of the first dark skins on America's Next Top Model, and they said her skin just was not good, so she would put a lot of Vaseline on. And then one of the contestants was like, can you just like wash the door handles after, because it's like grease, like bacon grease everywhere. Like, the microaggressions, you guys, if you do watch that stuff, it's just not okay. It wasn't okay back then. It's definitely not okay now. Yu Sai, this was one of them on one of the lists. He was a photographer, and this was Winnie Harlow's season. As you guys know, Winnie Harlow is an America's Next Top Model, and he would compare her to a panda or a porcupine because of her vitiligo. Crazy. The questioning, Yaya, that was her name, Yaya versus Eva. So Yaya was on cycle 3 with Eva, and she was very intellectual. It was kind of like they wanted her to dumb down. Like, they were like, you're too intellectual. But there was a moment where the judges, or I think it was a photographer, was like, we don't want you to always express your Africanness. Guys, he was like, you can tone it down. Like, I think it was Jay Alexander. He was like, I know you want everyone to know you're smart and everything, but it's like, sometimes you just need to sit there and be a pretty face. Like, we don't all need to know like you're from West Africa, and like you don't need to always embrace like your ethnicity all the time. And I'm like, okay. Yaya was also someone that did not have the greatest skin, but she made it to the finals with Eva. Tyra, okay, let's talk about Eva. Her famous walkthrough when she's serving, honestly. And Eva did not have a good first impression on the contestants. She was talking a lot. I mean, she said Shannon looked, was her name Shannon? One of the girls definitely had an ED, like an eating disorder, trigger warning. And she was very skinny. And Eva said she looks disgusting. She was talking about that with her friends, the one or two friends she had made. And it just got back to Tyra and the judges that, especially that Eva was a tough cookie. And I guess in the past, they had some Black women on there with attitudes. I would say Ramen from the first cycle definitely was super judgy. But when Eva walks in, she's like owning it. And then Tyra's like, well, what do you say about the 80% of contestants that say they don't like you? She said, we just had to, I think she said, we already hired Black bitches. I don't want to hire another Black bitch. Guys. Crazy. There was a Kelly girl that I also think was on season 3. Season 3, a lot happened. She was another Black woman. She would label herself as a Oreo, though, because she's like from New York, and she just says like her friends like call her Oreo because she's like talks like this, all this stuff, right? The judges would, I really felt bad watching that season, were constantly coming for her. They said, you're a pretty girl, but you just don't know how to work your face. And like some of her pictures were, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, atrocious, like her poses were. But their treatment of her, she came in with such high confidence into the competition and ended up leaving with such low confidence. Like they would berate her in front of people and just be like, you're no good, like what's the point of keeping you here? Honestly, they berate a lot of the women in front of other people, but specifically Kelly. You guys have to go back to Cycle 3. The way they treated her was honestly beyond me. Like I really did feel bad for her. Takara, she was also on Cycle 3. She was a plus size model, and the designer was like, do you really think I have anything for you? And Takara was doing some photo shoot, and the designer literally like zipped her skin. There's like an infamous clip like of her like shouting, like the designer literally zipped her thing. Like they really did treat Janice Dickinson. I mean, yeah, Janice Dickinson was also another person that I felt like was super rude to Takara, and was pretty clear that like there's no place for you in the modeling industry. They're not ready for you. Pretty sad. Let's get into the craziest photo shoots, and then we're gonna get into some scandals. Craziest photo shoots, when I was like recalling my watch and like doing my findings, my research. Cycle 3 spider photo shoot. Infamous Eva. If you're watching on YouTube, you have this. They thought it would be interesting to place tarantulas on them, but honestly, you should not be shocked because the first cycle they wrapped a snake around them. I'm like, when I saw that tarantula though, oh my gosh, Eva literally had a breakdown, but that ended up being one of her like best photos. It was for them to show off jewelry, but I'm like, why is there a spider? It was for them to show off jewelry though. I have jewelry on, you guys. Can you imagine a spider here? Like, I don't understand the point of that. Cycle 2, they had a celebrity photo shoot, and I will never forget Ziamara, who is a light-skinned black woman. They darkened her skin so she would look like Grace Jones. We love Grace Jones, right? But I think it was wild that they couldn't find another celebrity for her to embody. Like, I do think that is wild. I'm not gonna lie. Cycle 1, I said the snake photo shoot. Cycle 4, there was an animal photo shoot where they basically had to, which one was this one? I'm trying to remember. Maybe this is the astrology one I'm thinking about in Cycle 4, when there's like different models for different ones. You have to like pose like a lion. It was just so weird. Cycle 8, there was a crime scene photo shoot. They had a homeless one. There was a photo shoot where they had to swap races. That episode has literally now been removed. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in the biggest scandals and controversies. There was a raw meat photo shoot. That was Cycle 10. You cannot forget the infamous Cycle 17 Greek salad. There was a toddler photo shoot. This one was really creepy. It was like them depicted. What season was this? I don't know what season this was, but it was them like with different celebrities. It was kind of like a celebrity one, but as toddlers, and they were like honestly like posing with each other. But like as babies, like feeding each other food and stuff. That was a very bizarre one. Cycle 16 had a killer bees photo shoot. There was a graveyard photo shoot, and what made the graveyard photo shoot even worse was the fact that one of the contestants had just learned that their friend had passed away, and then they had to pose in the graveyard. I know this is also talked about in the documentary a little bit about like the trauma and like learning certain stuff, but some of the weirdest photo shoots, and I think we would have to start, honestly, if I'm moving into scandals and controversies, is the infamous swap races photo shoot, which I'm just like, how did that even get approved? And it's crazy because on my rewatch right now, that I think that would have been episode 5. So the way Hulu has it, they have removed it and it jumped from episode 4 to 6, or either 5 to 7. I can't remember if it's episode 5 or 6. You can't find it anywhere. It was this got milk photo shoot and it would depict the ladies swapping. Now, Jay Manuel claims he did not know this was going to be another thing. Like, he knew the Got Milk campaign was coming up, but I think he was learning along that, like, there was going to be a twist on it. So I think Tyra's reasoning was like she wanted to show that we have no cap on our races, so she wanted them to embrace other races, which is honestly dumb AF, especially if you have black, white, everything in between. Why can't people just model their own races? But this was so bad it has been removed, but it wasn't bad enough because they tried it like in cycle 17 again, or was it cycle 10? So this happened in cycle 4, and then they did that again in cycle 13 for whatever reason. But it was really weird. Like I said, you can't even find it anywhere. There's some photos you can find, but yeah, I don't know. That was just very weird to me. Let's move on to another controversy. I don't know why I just got this like weird email. Okay, I just got like the most random email, you guys. Sorry. Moving on. Cycle 1. And I didn't really see anyone talking about this. I just thought this was weird when I was rewatching how they were showing the ladies basically getting waxed on screen. They were really close to showing the ladies hoo-ha. I'm not going to lie. Another thing, when they would actually show their weight and call it out. It was giving me Victoria Beckham when she went on that show after she had just had her kid. And the guy made her step on the scale. Like, it's just like, just things back then. But I feel like I was shocked to see the Brazilian waxes because they had a swimsuits thing coming up, and that was like the first episode. It's like, oh, you guys are about to get waxed, and it's like, I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure I saw some hoo-ha. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like, it was very close, the editing, and I was just like, what is about to happen? Like, what is going on? When you think about cycle 1, though, you have to think about Shandy. And Shandy was someone that was also a misfit. She used to work at Walgreens and she almost won. I think she was like the top 3. I think she honestly... Who won? Adrian? I thought Adrian was a good contender. The top 3 were a good one, but I thought I could have saw Shandy winning because she was consistently performing that whole season. She had a drunken night. So this is when they were in their finale. Right. So during their finals, I think they went to Paris the first season. And she had a boyfriend at the time. I wonder if they're still together. I know this is also addressed in the documentary, but there was a scene where she's clearly super lit and they invite men back. I don't know. The producers say, hey, we're going to have these men come back, just to party with you guys, whatever. I guess they all get in the hot tub. Shandy says at that moment she was already super drunk. And next thing she knows, like, she's having sex with the guy. And she just feels like production definitely should have intervened. And she claims that was like sexual assault, like sexual, harassment, because she was not coherent for it. And she was just shocked that production really wanted to go forward with that. She did not want it to air. She was shocked it did air. And then also when she had to call her boyfriend to tell him that she cheated on him, she was shocked production wanted to run with that. And she claims that she asked them not to and it still went through. But she's saying she's not coherent at all. I remember watching that and I was just like, I just feel I shouldn't be watching this. I just feel like this isn't about the competition. Surely they have like petty arguments and stuff on the side, but I did feel really bad watching that. And I do feel like production definitely could have intervened. You look at situations like, if you guys watch Below Deck, what was it, Down Under, one of the first seasons, one of the guys keeps going into one of the stew's room. I mean, they're all employees, but he keeps going in there and now he's gone in there naked and he's like trying to lock the door and he's trying to cuddle with the girl. And even production cuts in. They're like, yo, we can't do this right now. They cut in. So it's like production definitely has the girth and the width to definitely cut a scene and be like, hey, we don't want to do this. We watch that now in modern day reality TV. If something's going left, it's kind of just like, all right, we don't want to film this. And especially something like that gets out of hand. So it is crazy that that was not handled. I also talk about cycle 4, obviously the models doing blackface, and this wasn't even, oh, I'm just gonna add some bronzer, some self tanner. This was literally getting paint and painting white models in complete blackface, and sometimes you would get a brown hue so they could portray Native Americans, which is crazy to me. There were black models getting white face to portray Asian women. It was honestly insane. When you think about controversies and scandals, though, you can't not think about Tyra Banks. We were all rooting for you, and this is the current season I'm on. I know the episode's coming up. It's episode 7, I believe. So Tiffany was eliminated, and yeah, Tyra just ripped into her. I'm going to talk more about this in part 2 because we'll get more context with Tiffany and everything, but apparently Tyra ripped into her so much. So Tiffany was a previous eliminated contestant from cycle 3. She did not make it that season, and she was talking about going back to the hood and just all that stuff, but she eventually did make it for cycle 4 through semifinals. And I think Tyra really took to her and was really, I don't know if she took to her, but she was rooting for her. Clearly, she was rooting for her. We were all rooting for you, right? I think she had a personal connection with Tiffany because she knew her story. So she obviously gets eliminated, and I think Tiffany's lack of emotional response, she did not break. She was like, okay, led into Tyra's tirade, and she started ripping into her, and she started saying how, like, essentially you can go back to sleeping on the air mattress. Like, a lot of stuff apparently was cut. That scene was so bad that they literally were prepped to get the lawyers involved, and the judges were just as shocked as well with Tyra's infamous blow up. But yeah, that's where we get that infamous or that famous gif of Tyra, we were all rooting for you. Like, you know what I mean? We'll talk about that though, because I know it's addressed in the documentary and with everything she's saying. I'm just talking about the things I recall and can collect is the biggest scandals and controversies. We got All Stars Cycle 17. So this one is really interesting. I never made it this far with America's Next Model when I was watching it then, when I'm watching it now. But we had Angela Preston who actually won the show, and she had disclosed with the production, they knew that her past consists of sex work, okay? I don't know if this is the OnlyFans time. I don't know if OnlyFans was on, but like I think she had an escorting past. Like she was some sort of sex worker. And the fact that she won, think production didn't like that she won. So they played like she won. She thought she won, but they didn't air that. They aired as the other woman winning. And Angela would actually file a lawsuit against the network. I don't think she won it, but she's saying like, you guys already knew about this, so to like have me like win and like do all this stuff, and it's like to yank it away. She thought she was going to be living a different life, and she wasn't, because they said you're like disqualified. They basically disqualified her after she won, which is honestly insane. Cycle 1, people don't talk about this. And just in my recent findings, I thought it was insane that Adrienne Curry got chewed out by the panel because she didn't get a chance to meet, and she ended up winning, obviously, but she didn't get a chance to meet all of her ghosties in Paris because as she's waiting outside of one, this guy literally goes to lift up her skirt. And like, she's obviously thrown off. She's like, dude, get away from me. And so it messes with her, and she misses this ghostie, and she tells that to them, and they said, well, stuff happens, you just got to keep going, which is just honestly crazy. Another scandal controversy we have to talk about is the widening and the unwidening of the gap tooth. So we had a contestant on, was it season 5 or which season is it? I don't know what season it is, but they wanted to remove her gap. They said it wasn't marketable, right? It was a Black woman. And then we have a couple of cycles later, they're trying to widening it, because that's when the widening of the tooth was really in. I cannot think of the famous model that is out right now, Buzz Cut. I think it's IK Twigs or something. Guys, what is her name? But her Gap is very marketable, and she is very marketed as a editorial high fashion model. That's what I said. Like with the models, it's just like it doesn't matter really how you look. It depends what kind of look though you can give, and hers is very edgy. So we did see the contrast of that. Um and then some other stuff. So during cycle 4, Kayleen, I mentioned this in the craziest photo shoots about a graveyard. She was told that her friend had just passed away, and then she gets to literally model in a graveyard. I think this is also talked about in the documentary. This was revealed on the True Hollywood story ahead of their arrival for cycle 3 to Tokyo. So that's where their finale was. The ladies were actually detained because Japanese officials thought they were sex workers, you guys. What? That is insane to me. They didn't have the proper visa. So production was actually halted for like 3 days, and they were literally detained. And Anne recounts that she literally had to call her mom. She was like 19 at the time. She's like detained in Tokyo, and she had to call her mom. That was the first time she had to call her throughout the whole process, letting her like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I think they thought initially it was a test to see, oh, are they going to give up? But they couldn't even find production. And this was like a huge network liability. The Ken Noki, the creator of the show as well, I think he was also liable. And they were actually trying to pull the plug on the show once this happened, because they could have been facing a huge lawsuit. Obviously, they got things figured out. But that finale was it was delayed very much so. Like it took them forever to finish filming because of the ladies getting lost in Japan and mistaken for sex workers, which is honestly insane. That's something I learned. Cycle 4 also, like I said, cycle 4, a lot of stuff happened in cycle 4 because the stakes were just so much higher. So Kenya, their finale is in South Africa, it's in South Africa. And on a photo shoot, she's actually sexually harassed. And the judges are kind of like, you just have to work through it. You just have to like use it to your best interest. But the model was like all up on her saying, I want to come back to America just so I can be with you, like touching her inappropriately. And she actually had to like pause the photo shoot. She's like, I don't feel comfortable modeling with this man in my ear. And this is something no one really talks about, and I'm trying to find it. This is like my last like interesting scandal before we end it. Yeah, that is crazy. 50 Cent was on. 50 Cent was on, and he actually pushed a contestant in the water. I guess he was like flirting with the contestant, and then she would go back, and I guess she like threw like drink. I don't know why she would throw a drink on him. She threw a drink, and he then pushed her in the water. I need to find this because I was on Entertainment Weekly, and this was one of them. Let me see. Oh my gosh. I was like, not 50 Cent. Literally. Okay, I found it. So this was during cycle 8. So 50 Cent makes waves with Jael. So cycle 8 took cliches about making a splash on the fashion scene to new lows. La 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 la. Special guest star 50 Cent push. And this, I would also say by cycle 4, you start seeing a lot of special guests, not just past models, but you start seeing a lot of special guests. Like I said, the theme changed. They had past winners on the intro theme. It was a production by cycle 4, because cycle 4 we had Beverly Johnson on, and then we had Serena Williams on. So cycle 8, 50 Cent is a special guest star. And oh my. So Giles Strauss, who actually is passed away from breast cancer in 2018. I guess she was antagonizing the rap superstar at the event. Fellow contestant Brittany Hatch remembers as a different story that contradicts the footage viewers saw in the final episode, and alleges that 50 Cent was egging Strauss on. So this is what is her name? Brittany says. She said he kept asking Jal to come over to him and then telling her to go away. And she kind of got aggravated with him. So she dumped water on his head, and he responded by throwing her in the pool, which Jael thought was hilarious. Cycle 8 competitor Sarah, who also at the party, corroborates Hatch's story. So that was just a weird thing. I was like, I can't wait to get to that. I was just like, that is a weird, bizarre thing that happened. But honestly, there's so many scandals and controversies like on America's Next Top Model. If anyone were to watch it in today's time, you would just honestly be like, what the heck? But I just wanted to do kind of like an overview of like, Tyra Banks as a person, the birth of America's Next Top Model, the judges' history, and like who we've had, and then some of like just the biggest moments from photo shoots to scandals and controversies. Now in part 2, we're going to really get into the documentary. I'm going to watch all 3 episodes and we're going to dissect what happened. We're going to clear the air with some things, and I'm going to just like do a deep dive on the documentary. But that was honestly setting it up. So if I do repeat some of these instances in, the documentary episode, you know where it's coming from. But yes, thank you so much for listening. I will see you guys for Toxic Tuesday. This was What's the Reality on What the Reality, America's Next Top Model, Part 1.